to our lecture of product and price management. And it's my great pleasure to welcome today Deepak Mathews from Zurich. Not only Zurich, the city, but the company as well. And you already are here the third time now, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And like the first time you were working with USM, the luxury furniture, and head of digital.
Yeah.
And the last time we were consulting, Deloitte, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And now, quite a career here in Zurich Insurance Group, one of the leading insurance companies in the world. And the idea is that Deepak is a great expert here from both his prior studies, but also from business experience in the topic of digital business and digital marketing. And what we see that in research and also in textbook, researchers in both marketing textbook alike are lagging behind because the real dynamism is here in business, in the industry. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of changes in how marketing is really done. And also in our research at the Institute, we are moving more towards digital marketing, digital business. And what we see, quite interesting, that if you think of digital business, here it's a lot about technology and digital processes. But what we experience and see at the time currently, that a lot of companies are realizing that also the good old idea of customer centricity and customer orientation can play an important role in digital business, where very successful companies like Amazon and also Zurich, they organize their business processes around the customer. So the idea of customer orientation seems to gain some relevance again due to digital marketing and digital technologies, where you can micro-segment the individual consumer based on so much data that's available, but also in whole processes directly interact. And so a core idea from the last 50 years in marketing, textbook and research, is the idea of customer centricity gains relevance, but now the implementation is different with a digital approach. And that's really interesting, and we said it could be here a good it adds to this lecture of product and price management, where we also have the idea of customer orientation as a key success factor to take an insight from a leading expert from consulting and the industry on digital business and digital marketing, and to take this idea of customer centricity, where the customer and his or her experience play an important role to give you an insight. And this will also be podcasted, as I'm realizing not all students can come to the lecture. This is also digital teaching in a way. To those at home listening to our podcast, also welcome. And the idea is also that this will be available on Ilias, on our platform, the podcast, and possibly also some lecture slides afterwards.
Yes.
Then it will be accessible to you. So welcome, Deepak, and it's also a pleasure for us from the Institute to listen to some new insights, also interesting for our future research. So welcome and thanks for coming to us.
Thank you so much, Professor. Very good intro. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to present what I'm doing and also share some of my experiences. So let me start with the agenda for today. So I will give a quick introduction, look at some kind of key concepts that are in the industry and also in the world of digital. Then I want to go deeper into Zurich Insurance and also the industry, what we're doing, what we're facing, and how we are adapting our strategy. And that will then be kind of the primary focus of my presentation, which is the whole customer experience and how we use technology to kind of deliver that experience to the customers. And I will finish off with just to show you what we're doing in Zurich and also what the kind of future holds for us. So just a quick introduction to myself. My name is Deepak Mathews. As you already heard, I've been working in a bunch of different companies. I think that logo went away, but anyway. So I was born in India, then I moved to Hong Kong, came to Switzerland, then I went to North America for a while, about 8 years. I studied there, worked there, and then came back to Switzerland. I was actually in Bern before, about 3 years ago. Now I'm in Zurich. And also, if you want to add me on LinkedIn or if you have any questions, feel free.
So where's the most beautiful country? Switzerland.
Actually, I would say Vancouver. Yeah, but it's close. But just Vancouver just also had a beach, so it's pretty. You can't really compete with that. So in terms of the objectives, so I just wanted to kind of give you guys an overview. As I mentioned, I'll give you an oversight of the industry insurance. It's kind of important in the presentation. Also look at customer experience in the digital age. I'll look at the technology ecosystem. Maybe you guys are not familiar, but I think it's extremely important now, especially when you start to work. You will come in contact with all these technologies very quickly because this is kind of the foundation. The IT systems are now the foundation of any business. If you don't do it, you're basically not relevant anymore. The other thing is, of course, I really want to try to connect some of the academic theory. As Professor had hinted earlier, we have really gone back to the original marketing theory. There was a little bit of a disconnect. I remember when I was studying, it wasn't really there, the whole customer centricity, it was all over the place, but now there's a very clear focus, and also you'll see that my company itself has really changed their strategy to match that. Then I also will really go into the kind of digital experience, we call it, or digital business, however you want to refer to that, and there's some very key aspects, and I want to really show you the kind of trends that are happening, kind of service design, explain what that is, digital marketing, what are the capabilities you need, analytics, measurement, NPS is now very important. It was originally a very customer-focused metric. Now it's gained very big importance. And also I want to look at the digital transformation itself and how that's coming about. And overall, I'll give you a perspective from a large company's headquarters, which is maybe very different if you work in a startup or a subsidiary, et cetera. And also, again, it'll be really give you a flavor of what it's like to work in digital. Obviously, I cannot cover everything, but just if you guys are interested, it would be maybe worth for me to kind of show you some of the things that you could do. And finally, please ask questions anytime you have if you don't agree or anything, just shout out. I really want to make it interactive. I don't want to just speak for an hour and a half. So I want to start with some key aspects of the presentation. So customer experience, so what is that? So it's really the sum of all the interactions. I know it's a very broad concept, so whether you experience with the brand, with the product, with the service. Usually in the industry, there's another word, brand experience, is kind of used interchangeably now. So the companies that sell low involvement products, so P&G, whatever, sneakers, Nestle, they will use brand experience because they're so focused on the brand. Once you buy the product, they don't care. I mean, you're not going to call their customer service if your sneakers is not good. You just throw it out, right? So, whereas if you are in a industry that has a lot of customer touch points, so this is, I'm talking about banking, maybe insurance, consulting firms, where this is the core of your business, you will always refer to customer experience. So in the presentation, I will really just use customer experience to mean both, and really refer to that end-to-end customer journey. The other key concept I want to look at is user experience, which is actually different from customer experience. So it's actually part of it. It's a subset of customer experience. But user experience is more dealing with your digital interaction. So when you're using a computer or your iPhone, the experience you have on that device with the different user interface, we call it, that's called the user experience. That is very much pertaining to the digital interactions. Just to show you some example of what is a good customer experience. User experience is obviously Apple, you all know. A lot of you have computers, you probably have an iPhone, so they really spend enormous time, even though they're a technology-driven company, they're very, very customer-centric. They really understand their customers. If you go to the Apple store, it is an experience, whether it's a Genius bar, whether how they display their products. And on top of that, they bring that again to all their products. So when you buy their product, you also get an amazing user experience because they think all of this through. And I'll show you, I want to give you some examples later on. Also want to look at the customer journey purchasing funnel. So in marketing, you're probably all familiar with this concept of the purchasing funnel. So when you buy a product, you usually go through this funnel where you are aware with the brand and you bring down the consideration set. Then you buy the product so it was a very kind of linear, simplistic model. It's what I learned in university. And I don't know how it is taught today, but basically this whole journey does not apply anymore. So the customer journey itself has fully changed, and this, of course, with the whole digital, with all the devices, all the information, which I'll also talk about. But essentially, the journey itself, because you have all the information available to you in your fingertips, the company cannot just bombard you with ads and try or send a salesman and expect that you buy the product, because you usually have much more information than in the past. And so at any point in the journey, a brand can come in, or a company or a retailer, and completely change the journey. And so this is kind of the concept right now, and you will see throughout my presentation the concept of the customer journey. Of course, I mean, it will look linear on the diagrams, but just be aware that it's not linear at all. It's always here and everywhere, but it's very hard to represent that on a graph. So what's an example of that? It's really, I don't know if you heard of Alibaba and the Singles Day. So they completely changed how people buy products. So you're now in China, for example, if you're single, you don't wait around whatever and think about a phone and then you look at different companies. You just go on Single Days and you buy it. And it's a huge, huge, huge thing. $30 billion in sales. It overshadows anything in the US. I mean, Black Friday is coming up. There's Cyber Monday, but this is nothing in comparison to what Alibaba has done. And this is really an example of how they use digital to completely change the purchasing funnel.
What does it mean? Like the singles go and shop online, but they have to prove that they're single, or
no. It's a whole gimmick. So you know how you have the Black Friday and where all these sales. So they have these huge advertising campaign on TV. You have big celebrities coming in, and then throughout the day they give you offers here and there, and it's basically targeted at singles, because I mean there's a huge population of men that are single there and they cannot find wives because of the whole disparity. So they're just targeting this segment and essentially making a huge profit out of this. So I'm surprised you guys haven't heard of this. This is recent. It's a
I read, but I always wondered what it really is.
Okay, yeah. They call it Singles Day, but it's basically a whole gimmick to exactly, yeah. So that's kind of a big example of how this whole happens now. So let me quickly go into the industry a little bit dry of what insurance is and the company. But I think it's important that I give you an overview of that. So Zurich Insurance, as you probably all heard of the brand, it's a fairly big company. We're in over 200 countries right now. $70 billion in revenue. So we actually rank as the biggest financial services company in Switzerland, bigger than UBS and Credit Suisse. We have about 53,000 employees, and we have a bunch of brands all over the world. So if you go to US, our big brand is Farmers. Travel insurance, we have Covermore. We have Islamic insurance called Takaful, among other. And Clink is our new on-demand insurance also. In terms of our kind of brand and stature, in Switzerland we are fairly high up. We are in the top 3 or top 5 usually. And globally as well, if you look at the different insurance companies, we are in the top 5 or top 10 of the biggest companies and the biggest brands. So quickly to the insurance industry. So I mean, I'm guessing all of you have an insurance policy, health, car, home. Yes, so you know how it is, the whole, the process of buying an insurance policy. So the thing with insurance that has really not changed in the past 150, 200 years, and it's still a massive industry. It's one of the few industries that has not been fully disrupted yet by the whole digital revolution. And the thing with insurance, we always get the comparison to casinos, and it's not exactly the same thing. It's kind of two, I would even consider them opposite. So when you go to a casino, what are you doing? You're artificially creating risk for entertainment. So you'll pay them $100, whatever, and then there's a new risk that you're creating. With insurance, it's the opposite. Insurance, you go to insurance company with an existing risk. So either you know that you may get into an accident, or you may have a health problem, and this is a kind of an existing risk that they probably priced, and then you are offloading the risk to the insurance company, and you are buying future security and protection. So in essence, it's really inherently it's a social good. It's kind of the basis of our economy, and how we have kind of grown so quickly is if you need to take away that risk so you can make investments, right? But unfortunately, what's happened is that the trust in the insurance companies is pretty much at an all-time low. People think insurance is a scam. They don't really understand the value. And the insurance companies haven't really done much to change that image. And what is happening is that there is a huge, the revolution, as you all know. I mean, you are probably the digital kind of natives. In the past 20 years, you see the amount of things that have kind of come about, everything from, Google, the broadband, Wi-Fi connections, Spotify, Hulu, all the devices, the PCs. So, and this has kind of really changed how people interact with brands. And also, the companies need to adapt to that. So what, for us at least, in the insurance industry, we are aware of that, and we're looking at all the different technologies, everything from chatbots, smart homes, AI, shared economy, self-driving cars. If you look at all of that, it's a little bit scary because we don't know what is next, and any of this may come and disrupt the industry. It hasn't happened yet, but it's very much on the tip of the iceberg, I would say. And as I explained, the whole media landscape has changed. Marketing is no longer the same. One statistics that I saw was about 50% of the time by an average American is spent looking at a screen. So this is huge. So this is basically, the screen is the most important place in the world right now if you're a marketer. So it's very important that we look at this very big statistic. The other thing also is that the touch point, right? So there's so many different touch points now. You have your email, social media, you have your digital kiosks. So because of the whole digital revolution and the fact that you have so many smartphones that you saw in the earlier slide, the communication has become reciprocal. I mean, people expect a company to automatically respond to your concern, to customer service. And this is very much unlike the past. So unlike the past, in the 70s, 80s, the golden age of marketing at Mad Men, you made some ads, then you bought some media, and that was it. That was like the boom, then you sold your product. This is not at all the case anymore. You cannot do that. The whole media landscape is fragmented. You probably don't watch the same channels or the same media outlets as your parents. It's everybody, it's very niche right now, so you cannot simply just, outspend your competition. And this is to do with the customer journey. So what that is what this is showing you is that your linear purchasing funnel, which you very simply, bought some media and did some marketing and then you made the sale, is no longer the case. You cannot do that because the customers have the endless information. They can check whatever, talk to friends on social media, read reviews. So all these things have essentially kind of changed the purchasing funnel into a much more complex customer journey that you need to understand. And again, I will come back to this a lot in my presentation. So what does that all mean for the insurance companies? So what we are seeing is that the insurance startups, we call them insurtechs, they have found a lot of gaps in our value chain. So they have found everything from the marketing and sales to the underwriting. They can price risk better because, at the end of the day, as the professor said earlier, it's all about data. And what do you do as an insurance company? Our core product is actually data. You're just simply pricing the risk. That's all we do. And that's our product, right? It's not a physical product. So the more data you have, the more statistics you have, the more kind of machine learning and things you can apply to it, the better your product will be. And the better you can price for the customer. You can give, if you're a person and if I know you're a good driver and you will not crash, then I can give you a lower premium. And so I don't need to, and if I can segment you out from the other person who's much riskier, this is a huge, huge advantage for me. And so throughout our kind of value chain, so everything from customer servicing, so claims, customer management, insurtech companies are really hitting at each part. So we actually bought some of them up. Our competition is buying a lot, but essentially, it's like playing whack-a-mole. If you take out one of these, somebody else will come. So you cannot actually just simply try to kind of eat up your competition. You have to compete properly. And that's the other thing I want to show you is, is how our industry looks like right now. So this also means that the local champions. So in Switzerland, you're probably all familiar with Swiss Life. It's a very Swiss company. In the US, you have Travelers. In the UK, you have Aviva. So as a global company, what's happening is that not only are you being attacked on your value chain, you're also being attacked in geographic regions where the local players can really price better, they understand the customers better, they know the language, the culture, they're competing on you in customer experience, and they can basically win on that because they have a much less focus, whereas Zurich Insurance need to focus on 200 countries, or we have about 40 big markets, so it's very difficult for us to have one strategy. And I'll show you how our strategy has changed, obviously, to adapt to that. The other thing is, of course, is we're not the only ones in the game. There's some very big players. You probably heard of Allianz, AXA, Generali, Chubb, AIG. So these are very big companies like us. They're all investing huge amounts of money into technology. They're buying startups. And what basically we're kind of scared of is getting back into a corner. We have not gone the same route. We're still kind of waiting or kind of fixing our company before we start to make those big investments. The other thing is, of course, Chinese players, and this is really the unknown, how they're going to come in. These companies are now massive. They're the biggest insurance brands, actually, if you look at terms of value, and they are far ahead of us. So I don't know if you guys have been to China, but basically you can do everything from your phone. You can buy the grocery, you can order the car, and it's maybe just one app. All the payments are basically mobile. If you want to give money to a beggar, you just do a scan, boom, and that's it. And these companies were built for the digital age, and right now they have kind of conquered China, and now they're getting ready for the huge investments abroad. They already started with Japan, and they're kind of probably going to go after Asia, and once they take Asia, it's really going to be coming after our core markets, which is US and Europe. So again, we are quite scared of that. We don't know what the future is. Obviously, there's regulations. We don't know how this will all play out. Politically, it's not easy for a Chinese company to just come to Europe and try to invest. They may buy companies, you don't know. Chinese companies, for example, have already bought some of the pharmaceuticals, for example, Syngenta. So it is already happening in other industries. So there's a great unknown, right, for the industry itself. The other thing is, also as you pointed out earlier, companies like Amazon and Apple, TripAdvisor have completely changed the customer expectation. So customers now really want convenience, they want transparency, they want to be empowered, they go make reviews. I don't know how many of you guys make reviews or look at it. Before you buy a product, most likely you'll probably go read up on it, right? Somebody else has written something. So this is, what this is doing is that when they buy insurance, they expect the same thing. Especially the millennial generation, especially the people who are used to buying, things on their phone. They want that, that Uber experience. They want that Amazon experience. And so this is also kind of throwing us, let me say, wrench in our marketing and our customer experience, and because our systems are not. Sorry, Prof?
Well, no, just.
So our systems, as you'll see later, are not up to the task of these guys who are built. They were all built for the digital age. We were built in the 1800s, so we don't have that kind of things in place already. We don't have the organizational digital DNA, we call it, in place. Also, the thing is, I don't know if you guys heard of Lemonade or Trove. So these are new insurance companies, basically. So they offer pretty much everything on demand. So they've deconstructed insurance as we know it, and they have really changed how you buy the insurance. So with Lemonade, it's like you talk to a chatbot, and you can get your whole the policy in 90 seconds. With Trove, it's like you're insuring on demand. So we also have something called Clink, and that is competing against that. But basically, if I have a phone or if I have a computer, and let's say I'm traveling to Eastern Europe or America, before I travel, I can insure that. I just do one swipe. And then once I come back, I can take away. So in case something happens to me, and this is really applicable in travel insurance, where you only want travel insurance for maybe the week that you travel. You don't want to have travel insurance the whole year, right? Because I travel maybe a month a year, something like that. So I don't need it for the 11 months. So what is that doing? And essentially, it's creating a perfect storm, that we call it. And it's not just, obviously I talked about the customer revolution and the innovation technologies that are there, which are more relevant for this presentation, but there's other things that are happening also. So the geopolitical risks, all the distribution is changing, there's all these new risks. You probably heard about the wildfires, hurricanes. So we are insuring all these things. So we are really in a bit of a mess if things go wrong, especially with global warming and the climate change. Because we will end up paying all the claims, right? So this is a huge liability for us. And the industry as a whole, we're seeing it in a perfect caught in a storm. And obviously we have to change the way that we do the business, because so far the industry, the big companies have not really done much to cater to the new environment. And so this is where I want to show you the S-curve, as is known. Basically what you see here is kind of the Zurich strategy now. The current strategy is very much focused on operational efficiency or cost cutting, however you want to call it. So we are really looking at all the different expenses, or making sure that it's organized, the company's organized well. So we had a huge change from a very centralized organization to a more power to the market. So there's a lot of more decentralized and more empowerment of our local markets, so they can make decisions quicker, they can cater to the customers better. This is a little bit opposite to some of the other industries, like the car industries, where it's becoming much more centralized, because the product, I guess, is the same everywhere. So for us, it's the other way, because insurance is very, very local. The regulations are different in each market. In terms of penetration rates are very different. So it's because the diversity we have of the product and the markets, it makes much more sense to decentralize a lot of the things, especially underwriting. Underwriting, for those of you who don't know, it's basically the process of pricing risk. So this is our core function, where we look at different statistical models, the probability of you being in an accident, probability of you having an illness, and then we put a price on that, and then we make a product based on that. So, and the new strategies, of course, is very much about the customer, and basically it's the whole digital transformation. So if you're looking at the customer experience, you really cannot do that without catering to the digital devices. You cannot just send a form, you cannot just send a guy to your house. That doesn't make any sense. You need to cater to the customer experience digitally, which means by definition you need to involve technology, IT systems, all the infrastructure architecture, and you'll see a lot of that in a bit. So our strategy, as I said, this is basically what we see. If you go in Zurich, in the headquarters, you will see this plastered everywhere. This is our new strategy. And you have customer at the very, very front. Whatever you do, accounting, billing, you need to focus on the customer. You need to think about the customer. And we have a whole, and it's actually my department that is kind of heading this. So it's very good that I'm basically, seeing the whole thing up front. And of course, we're doing the digital part of the customer experience. So we have a lot of now testimonials. We have, releasing a lot of customer stories, really to kind of motivate the company to really go back to our purpose, right? Why are you there? That's the reason that we, also what we want to try to portray to the bigger organization. Is really all about the customer. Secondly and thirdly, we want to obviously simplify the organization. It's a large, complex company with a lot of different departments and a lot of matrices. So that is being very much simplified. Our CEO has a great vision and strategy, and he's really executing that. The other big thing is also for us to innovate. Once you get your house in order and focus, and you have a very customer-centric company, then you need to start to really look at their different needs and how you want to serve them better. So just to show you how the journey looks. So this is a very simplified insurance journey. Obviously, it doesn't exactly happen like this. You have many different touch points that you're going back and forth maybe, as I showed you. So as I said, it's just to explain how it is. So what you see here is, it's similar to this purchasing funnel that I showed earlier. So in the awareness stage, you have the, usually people are searching or they see an ad, so you have a need. Then you usually come to the website or a landing page. Then you maybe sign up for a newsletter. So this is all still the awareness. You're trying to figure out, okay, do I want the product? Do I need it? And then you obviously want to compare the product. And what happens in insurance, you usually try to get a quote. So this is the first kind of a point where you are engaging with the company. It's kind of, you're a lead for us, basically. And here you usually will, right now, you will go to different websites, AXA, Allianz, maybe you go to Comparis. So you could check out the different rates, the different coverage. And usually then you go into two ways. Either you just buy it online, a lot of the young people do, or you usually want to talk to an agent. So for more complex products like a life insurance policy, or if you're looking at things for your third pillar, so these more complex products, you will usually want an advisor or a consultant. And so we have a whole kind of distribution in place. There's actually our own agents in Switzerland. That changes with different countries. So in Portugal, where I was doing another project, they were not related to us. They were independent agents and brokers, and they were selling different insurance companies. In Germany, Switzerland, for example, they are basically part of our employees, and the same thing for farmers in the U.S. So it really depends on the. So that's where you see there. Before the purchasing, you usually want to find an agent. Then you want to call them usually or talk to them. They maybe visit you. And then once you kind of enter that purchasing stage, you're ready to buy the policy. You usually want to get some advice. You usually do the quote and buy. Then you'll eventually buy the policy, right? And then there's a whole onboarding. You will maybe download the app of the company because you want to see it on your phone. Maybe you get a paper and you put it in your whatever drawer. That's what I do. And then there's a whole area or a whole stage called the service, which is when you're interacting with the company. So right now the service we're not really focused on this whole aspect of service. However, we're finding that it's becoming much more important these days. And essentially, this is where we will be targeting in terms of when we build a user experience. We want to become a more service-oriented company. So what that means is providing things that are valuable to the customer. So if you have a health insurance, you may want prevention measures, you may want advice, you may want a gym membership. So all these kind of things that are we call the ecosystem. So around the insurance. To prevent you from getting into the accident or prevent you from doing something bad. So that's the idea of the whole service. Then you have the claims, which is very unique to insurance. So the claims journey is really the moment of truth, and this is basically where you kind of make it or break it with your customers. And we've spent a lot of time making sure the claims is right. So the problem with claims is that we have a conflict of interest with our customers per se. So if I'm paying money out in claims, then I'm taking that out of my profit margin. So the company doesn't have any incentive to pay claims. So this is where the perception of the bad insurance company comes in. So obviously everybody's trying to change that. Once you have the claim, let me say you get the payments. Oh, by the way, just to let you know, not everybody goes to the claims. It's about maybe 80%, 90% of people don't ever file a claim. So you just have insurance. And these are called sleeping users, and I'll usually some concept later on. And then you have the renewal, and where you will see at the end of the year, you'll probably get an email or something like that, and then you usually renew the policy. So that is the insurance journey. It's a very linear. Obviously, it doesn't work like that, but just so you understand how it looks, and then you will see the different when you see the different ecosystems and things like that, you will be able to understand better. So, and then the question is, of course, why should you focus on the customer? So study after study say the same thing, that there's a big gap, first of all, that what the customers perceive and what the companies think is two different things. There's a big gap. And the other thing is that they keep finding in study after study is that there are huge benefits. All the companies that focus on the customer, really are able to increase revenues. They are able to reduce costs. They reduce the churn rate, which is people canceling policy. So the huge benefits of maximizing the satisfaction of the customer journey, let's say. And you can see some examples also, the companies that really focus. I mean, people always say, okay, but these are technology companies. But no, actually, no, they're not. If you look at Netflix, they were not a technology company. They were sending mail order DVDs, right? And Amazon, yes, they had good e-commerce, but it's really the supply chain. They were so focused on the customer experience. That's why they got so good. If you look at everything they've done, they really focus, first and foremost. And you can watch like an interview with Jeff Bezos when he first started. They go to his office and it's a complete mess. It's like, a really run-down place. And they say, hey, how come your company is like this? And he said, I don't care because my customer doesn't see this. Everything else, everything that matters to my customers, I do it properly. And now he has, he's a multi-billionaire, one of the richest people in the world. And of course, Apple is the same. If you look at Steve Jobs, what he done, and you'll see a quote from him later, it's all about the customer experience. And those that don't look at the customer, like Kodak, Blockbuster, Toys R Us, they're all kind of out of business. So this has proven again and again that this works. And customer journey essentially has become the differentiation battlefield, let's say. So, I want to kind of boil it down, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but in my opinion, if you are competing in an industry or a market, you have two choices. Either you focus on the price, you have the lowest priced product, or you basically, if you want to offer a premium product, if you want to, not worry about the price, you'll have to offer a better customer experience. So I want to quickly show you a video of, oops, this works. So that is the question. So how do you figure out what your customers really want? And now I want to try to explain to you how we look at that. It's a very broad concept. It's not so simple, but it's good to kind of break it down. So the first thing is, generally what you need to do is look at the customer journey as a whole, right? It's not, a lot of the companies are focused on just one touch point. They will build one app and build one website, and then that's it. They will not really look at what happens. And also the other thing is that it's, the customer journey is owned by different parts of the organization. So marketing may own one, sales may own one. For us, it's like we have claims, which may own the claims journey, and then maybe there's a whole renewal department. So you have to look at it in one way, and that's also what we have done in Zurich, is we have kind of consolidated that and under my department, which looks at the whole entire customer experience. And the second thing is that you need to really do a lot of different, let me say, mapping. So you need to, where do you start? You got to go and talk to your customers, really, really understand what their pain points are. And that is basically the concept of service design. I don't know if you heard of it, but this is basically the idea of making interactions with complex products and services as appealing, as intuitive as possible. It's kind of, if you go to a design school, or if you're doing design thinking, it's basically the same thing. And you're looking at the customer journey from different aspects. You have the props, which are the kind of digital artifacts. You have the processes, and also the people who are interacting. So it's a whole field by itself. The most common way to do it is called a double diamond approach. So it's essentially you start, you set your business priorities and you say, okay, what do I need to do? And if you look at your data or you have insights from your company and you will say, okay, my customers want a customer portal, let's say, because they want to quickly manage their policies. You will start there. Then you diverge and say, okay, all the different ways you can do it. Then you will define, then this kind of comes back again to call the definition of a kind of a problem or a brief that you have. Then you usually give that to the project team or an agency or however you're set up. And then they will then go away and come up with the whole, the experience of that, right? So if it's a customer portal, how should the interactions be? What kind of information does the customer want on there? So it goes, again, it diverges. You then develop the whole product. Then again, you come back and you deliver it. So this is the kind of a basic overview. I don't want to go into too much details, but just to give you a flavor of how this whole design process looks like. And this is an example from Zurich Insurance, so how we do it. So we have these kind of key steps that we have. So we usually start with the hypothesis workshops, as I said. We have research with the key stakeholders, which are usually the markets or the business teams or product teams. Then we map the journey of the customer, and then we kind of figure out, okay, how, in terms of action planning, how you deliver it, how you develop it. And then, of course, the whole thing with the measurement and reporting. So that's just to show you how we look at the customer, where we start and how we build that up. And then you see here the key stages: discover. So if you look at the old slide, discover, define, develop, and deliver. And each stage we have different deliverables, methodologies, all these things in place. So. And it's really important, and why we do it is it's important to understand the customer, feel their pain. And one of the quotes I really like is from Bill Gates: your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. So, a lot of people don't realize that. They just, they always focus on the success after success. Oh yeah, this customer is great. But really, as a company, what it should focus on is finding those people that don't like your product or have a bad experience, and then really trying to work with them to see where the problems are. And one of the ways we do it is called the Net Promoter Score. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. So it's built by a company called Bain Consulting, and you've probably seen this before. So if you buy a product or a service, they will send you a survey afterwards with email or SMS, sometimes even on the kiosk, and they will ask you to rate your experience with the company. So we do that. So every time you buy a product or you interact with us, we have a whole setup that gives you this questionnaire, and you fill this questionnaire, and then you rate the company, and they ask you, would you recommend the product to a family, colleague, friend, depending on what it is. It's always the same question, and there's also a kind of a free text. This is the NPS program, and the NPS is really crucial because it lets you segment the customers, understand who the customers who are not satisfied are, and they will be basically ranking you. And if you get if you give a rank of between 0 and 6, you're a detractor, which means that you are negatively promoting the company. If you're 7 or 8, you don't really, you're fine with the experience. And then if you are a 9 or a 10, you're a promoter. You really had a great experience. So this is what it's telling you. And there's a whole process called Close the Loop, where you call your detractors, so just to get information. So we're doing that at a very high leadership level. So all the senior leaders need to call the customers now. So, which is very good because they then get to feel the pain of the customer, right? And they understand the process, and they can then go and change. So this is a huge, I think, step for us, that we have the CTL, or Close the Loop calls across the company. And so we use NPS as a catalyst. So we have kind of made this our kind of focal point. We're implementing it in all the countries. We're covering all the touch points. So we always know where the customer is feeling, and if they have bad experience, we will know. And of course, if you're a promoter, the promoters usually stay longer, they buy more, and they're less price sensitive. So it's really the customer experience. And then, so before I kind of wrap up for the break, and the next section I will talk about technology and really take you in depth into all the systems that you need. This is a great quote from Steve Jobs. You need to start with the customer experience, right? So, what I'm seeing today in many of the companies I work with and in consulting is that people just see some nice technology and some software and they immediately jump on. They don't think, okay, does my customer need that? Do they care? And the chances are, most likely they don't. And this is what really the big mistake. And I think we also have that internally because we are a very IT-driven organization because there are large IT systems in place. So IT has a lot of power. And now it's a lot better. Now you're kind of shifting that. We've seen a big shift. And even they are acknowledging themselves that customer experience should be the first point. Technology is extremely important. Nobody's denying that. But you absolutely need to do the customer experience, the journey mapping, understand the customer, design the experience, and then only should you go to the technology. So with that, I will pause with the break, and then after the break, we'll talk about the rest. Okay, so now I really want to go into the technology, which is really the core, I would say the foundation of digital customer experience. The challenge we have, as you probably know, is how do you bring the whole customer experience, which is usually done by the marketing or a strategy group, and then combine that with the technology stack, which is usually separated in the IT or group operations. So in Zurich, so I'm in group strategy. We come up with the customer experience framework, and then we have a whole even bigger department called group operations that does all the technology, the systems, running them. And the problem we have today is that this is your landscape. This is just for the, let me say, customer experience or marketing landscape. And you can see there's hundreds, thousands of new technologies every day. It's really, if you're in the field, it's very difficult to know what is good, what is not. And so this is the kind of big challenge we face. I mean, and I've been facing this in all my companies, in the past as well. The other thing is that, like most incumbent or big companies in the financial services, we have what is known as legacy systems. So these are old systems from 1980s, sometimes 1990s. It's really difficult for us to just move away because there's so much data in there. And also because some of the products like life insurance, they are 30-year policies. So you cannot just move them, right? So some of the products like car insurance, it renews every year. So it's easy to maybe move them from an old system to a new system. Whereas some of them you cannot. And this is it's a costly process. It's very labor intensive. So the whole thing is, really complex. And this is if you read the survey of any, CTO, CIOs, the chief technology officers, this is the number one problem that they will have over and over again is their legacy systems. So at Zurich, we kind of developed a modern technology stack. It was a huge work. Obviously, you cannot see much. You cannot really make sense of it, but I will explain. But this is how it generally looks like, our technology stack, or we call it digital reference architecture. So when you have a digital touch point, how do you deliver the experience? And this is a 300-page document, actually. This is a very simplified version of that. And so I want to look at just this part, which is basically around the customer. How do you serve the customer, the different touch points, and these are the different things I want to go and explain. Some of them you may already know. You're probably all familiar with social media. You probably, bought something online as an e-commerce system. So in the insurance industry and in most industry, you need to have these technology systems in place. You cannot do customer experience without these. And the very basic is the CRM, or customer relationship management. You need a marketing automation, so all the newsletters, emailing. You need a content management system for the websites. You need to do search engine optimization, so ads, making your website rank on Google. Obviously social media, there's analytics, you need to get all the data. You need to have e-commerce properly, especially if you're selling online. You need a self-service customer portal. So insurance is very important because customers usually want to see their policy, change policies, and that's extremely important in banking. So if you do banking, you cannot do banking without an app that that you can do e-banking, right? So it's not as important in insurance, by the way. And on overall, you need a really integrated system. So this is just a foundation. So before you can go do all this fancy innovation and new services, you need to get the house in order, build a foundation. And I want to show you each of these in a little bit more detail, so you have an overview of what it is. And I'm pretty sure you'll encounter, if you work in any business today, you will come into contact with the CRM. CRM is where you store all the customer data, the customer interactions. And basically, there's many different tools. So these are the tools we use. So Salesforce, Dynamics, and Sugar CRM internally at Zurich. What it is just a big customer database. Obviously, there's a whole process around that. It's not just an IT thing, just so you're aware. Customer relationship management is a whole field in itself. You need to have the correct processes. How do you support the customer? How do you serve them? How do you record the data? So all these need to be defined in your customer relationship management program.
So maybe a question here. It seems like a lot of the tools seem to be external from leading companies like Microsoft.
Yeah.
Salesforce is also named.
Yeah, it's a big company, exactly. It's one of the big.
What really makes the difference here? Is it like it has to be solid, you're saying? But is it like are the internal capabilities with Zurich that can, like you, of course?
Yeah.
Or what really makes the difference here? Because anyone could use those tools.
Yes.
Company, any competitor.
Yeah. So again, it's back to my original point. Before you engage in with these suppliers, you'll probably have a technology integrator, right? You'll probably have Accenture, Deloitte, whatever. Yeah. Before you have these things in place, you need to understand the customer journey. You need to know, okay, I need a CRM because when somebody's filing a claim and they're calling my customer support needs to have this data at their fingertip. And then you need to go back to your technology system, make sure that this relevant data is being pulled from this system and is available at this time when this call comes. So that is the key. So you really have to connect all the dots, and this is the whole process called enterprise architecture in itself, where you look at the business processes, you connect the IT systems and processes. So there is a whole thing you have to do behind the scenes. I mean, obviously, I'm showing you a very, just a surface level. And what I mean is something like this. So if you have a CRM, for example, you need to have a 360 view of the customer. So at any point in the journey, if a customer contacts you, you need to know what the customer has done in the past, whether they have received an email, whether they've called an agent, whether they bought a policy. All these need to be in the system and accessible to the touch point or the contact person. And this could be also an automated chatbot that is pulling the information. For example, we now have a chatbot in the UK. Basically, it's a claims bot, and when you kind of file a claim, the bot essentially is guiding you through the process. So here again, the bot needs to know that you're a customer, you have a household policy, that you have this much coverage to help you. So all these needs to come together, and the CRM is usually the centerpiece of the customer experience, customer centricity. Without a CRM, you cannot really do much, right? So this is the core point I want to make. The second thing is also in marketing is very important. It's called marketing automation now. So a lot of the tasks in the past have basically been, you can automate them now. You don't need a person to sit around and just send emails after email and look at what the email was, who clicked where. You can automate the whole thing, and this is really key at the beginning of the journey. So when you are trying to basically take those raw leads, so people that are kind of considering you in their consideration set, and to convert them into a paying customer, you need to have a marketing automation process in place. And here again are some examples. So Salesforce Marketing Cloud is a big one. Adobe has a big tool for that. So this is and let me just show you a very clear example of what I mean by marketing automation. So let's say I send a newsletter from Zurich out on our new product called Agile Protection, right? So if somebody goes to my website and they're interested, they're browsing through, I collect all the data, then I can change the lead internally in my CRM. I change my lead score. I increase the lead score. I can then give that lead to either salesperson, or I can engage with my social media team to say, hey, why don't you go tweet them? Maybe you have some of their other information, so you can start to engage with them. So this is a very basic workflow, and this can become very, very sophisticated, where you are targeting people based on how they're interacting with your brand online. So that was marketing automation. The other thing you obviously need is a content management system. Content management system, so everybody has visited a website, I presume. So how do you edit the website, right? So it's actually quite a technical thing to do. You need to type HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's not really a language, HTML, but it's similar. It's not so simple. A non-technical person cannot just go and build a website. You need to have some idea. So what you have now in most companies, and also you probably heard of WordPress, you probably heard of Squarespace, Wix. These are content management systems that let you edit the website just like a Word document. You can just change text, add image, and this is a whole sophisticated system now by itself. And it really allows the separation of the content, so you don't need your IT team to make all the marketing things, to do all the marketing things, like launch a campaign. You can easily set up a campaign page. You can have a product page. So all these, you can have a whole, marketing funnel just set up from the content management system. So for us, we have, this is not enough anymore. So the CMS, I remember in USM and my old companies, it was very basic. Now it's become much more complicated, much more sophisticated. You can do a lot more. So the content management system has evolved to become what is known as a digital experience platform, or DXP. It is known in the industry right now. So DXP essentially, you have the website, but it comes with a lot of services around it. You can do transactional stuff. You can have analytics. You can have the integration to your CRM. You can have all the data. You can have personalization. So this is a huge thing where essentially you can take behavioral data, ethnographic data from the customers, and you can personalize the content and basically serve pages that are very relevant. So if I'm looking for car insurance and I know from the clicks on my page, I'm just going to give them car insurance offers and maybe lower the price. So I can do a lot of things if I have one of these DXPs. So internally we use Sitecore as our global provider, and then some countries like Australia also use Adobe Experience Manager. These are the key players in the field right now. And then in terms of digital marketing capability, so everybody has searched on Google. So there's basically two things you see. One is the paid ad, and this has become more and more of the space. So if you ever search on Google and you don't have the ad blocker in place, you will see the entire page basically as a Google ad. So Google Ads, you actually pay for that. They have a whole product called Google AdWords. Now it's just called Google Ads, I think. Bing has the same. So all the search engines in China, they have it for their search engine. Baidu in Russia, for Yandex. So this is how the search engines make money. And so the paid ads is a quite similar to advertising. But the good thing is that it's extremely well targeted. So you already know the customer wants something because you can target by the search, right? So you don't have to blast ads and hope that 1 in 10 person will like your product. You can blast ads and say, okay, this person is looking for a car insurance, and I know that they're interested, so this is much more relevant. So that's why Google is so big. About 90% of their revenue comes from these ads, actually, and they're just investing in all over the place. So that's and so the other thing is SEO, search engine optimization. You will hear it if you do marketing today. This will be a very big topic straight away. SEO, it's basically ranking on Google organically, so you cannot pay for this. You need to have a good website good content, and before you could do all these schemes and you could manipulate Google, or there's a whole industry, it's called black hat SEO, doesn't work anymore. Now you have to do proper marketing, proper PR, proper, it's really it's done a 360 now, it's gone back to traditional. So now if you want to do SEO or have a good ranking, you need to really invest in your marketing strategy. You need to engage your customer, you need to have relevant things for your customer. So this is really have done a 360. So when I started off about 10 years ago, this was not at all the case. It was all about hacking the system. So Google has really become, with their AI and their algorithms, have really become intelligent. So then there's social media. I mean, most of you know, I'm not going to go into too much details on social media. So all the companies usually have a channel. A lot of the companies use social media for their customer care. So when you have a problem, for example, when you're delayed in an airplane, for us it's when you have a question about your policy. We use the social media as a customer care. Obviously, it's also used heavily for advertising. So Facebook also makes all their money through advertising. And here again, it's highly targeted because Facebook knows everything about you. So it can really pinpoint the fact that you live in Bern and you have a car with this whatever number, and they can target a perfect policy for you. That's kind of the reason why Facebook does so well. The other thing with social media is it's really an opportunity to get a lot of intelligence from the competition. You can measure what is known as sentiment. So there's a lot of programs that let you do sentiment analysis, and so this is really valuable information. So if you are especially if you're trying to do customer experience, you can get a lot of data from your customers by looking at social media and also your competition. So internally, we have a whole setup that we get intelligence from these social media platforms. The other thing is digital analytics. It's also very big in Zurich. We do a lot of this. And the idea behind digital analytics is to really figure out what the customer is looking for, what they have done. Is our websites good? So there's a whole concept of user experience analytics. Then there's web analytics, which is just the figures. You see, this is just a very basic Google Analytics. We use more sophisticated programs. There's also what is known as a tag manager, so you can track the end-to-end journey of your customers. So, as they go through the funnel, you can basically see what they're doing. So this is basically in a nutshell. This topic by itself is a very complex topic. There's a lot of factors. There's a lot of ways you can measure. And I would say most companies don't have this properly set up, and we are also the same. We're trying to get this sorted, because this is such a basic foundation of everything you need. The other big thing is e-commerce. So you probably bought something online, either from Digitech, Galaxus, maybe Amazon. So with insurance is quite different, actually, the whole e-commerce. So how it usually works is you just buy a big insurance platform. So you have Magento, you have Shopify, all these different tools, and you put all your products on there. And usually if you have a product or it's called a SKU, SKU, or it's like a unit, it's very easy. You get all the information of the product, and you put it in the system, and then the customer can just browse through and purchase. So here's an example of a Garmin watch. I tried to buy one the other day. You can browse all the colors and whatever, and it's a fairly straightforward process because it's each product has a unique identifying SKU, we call it, and that gives you a price and all the information. So insurance is very different because most of our products are dynamic because you're pricing risk. So that's why you have to enter so much information into every time you buy insurance, because the company is using this information to actually make you a policy, and it's dynamically generated. We have engines behind our system. So usually there's a premium calculator, there's a rule engine. There's a lot of systems that come into play, so it's actually quite difficult for us to do e-commerce and do it properly because of all these, this kind of, the way that it is set up. And that's why you see here at the bottom, we'll probably need to tap into 5 or 6 different systems to give you a quote. And on top of that, when you buy the quote or you buy the policy, It then needs to go into a policy management system. So it's a little bit complicated actually how to do it, although across the world we are trying to standardize that. There are new tools for insurance companies. In Switzerland, you can actually buy insurance online, same in Germany, in a lot of our bigger markets. So it is kind of slowly getting there, but we do understand that we need to get there, because if you look at the UK, almost half the policies in the kind of normal, we call it general insurance, which is motor, home, liability, all is being bought online. Nobody's even going to an agent. So our agents are getting disintermediated, we call it. And traditionally, the insurance industry is very, very reliant on our intermediaries like an agents and brokers. So. The other thing, as I also mentioned earlier, is really having your self-service customer portal. So in insurance, as you saw in the journey, there's two big phases where you are really servicing the client. One is in just a service when you want to change your policy, you want to add coverage, you want to see maybe your stocks, because obviously we have life insurance. It's also a financial product. So like a bank, you need to see how you're doing, your portfolio is doing. And in Switzerland, for example, we'll do the third pillar, so 3A, 3B. You probably want to know how much money you made or how much money is there. So this needs to be, and so for an insurance company, extremely important to, if you want to be customer centristic, to offer this information in the fingertips of your customer. So whether it's a mobile phone, your computer, iPad, this needs to be there. So again, we have a whole initiative internally to really move to this. Several countries have it. So Spain is one of them. We have that in Italy and UK for some products. So, but overall, as a global strategy, we're also trying to really get there to offer A, first, you can buy online, and B, you can check your policies, get everything in a nice, convenient app, and customers really expect you to provide this very seamless experience. So from buying a policy to downloading the app to seeing your, so this is something that, again, we're working on. The main problem, as I mentioned earlier, is that the data is in legacy systems, and you will see later how we are trying to address this fact in Zurich Insurance. So, of course, now that you know kind of, let me say, the foundations of a customer experience ecosystem, the key thing is that you need to have it all together. So it doesn't make sense, and I was telling you earlier, you cannot just look at one touch point, two touch point, third touch point. You need to bring it all together. You need to have a unified strategy. You need to make sure that the end-to-end customer experience is consistent. I use the word seamless, but what that means is that the customer doesn't realize that it's just, they don't see a break in their journey. They don't need to all of a sudden, buying a policy, then they have to call the agent, which is an inconvenience. They just want everything on their phone, everything in one go. That's what the word seamless is. So in order to do that, you need to have a really cohesive digital ecosystem. So in kind of the industry right now, if you're working in digital, you either can buy this already. So a lot of companies offer this together. So Adobe is a big player, IBM, Oracle, all these companies will have this integrated ecosystem together. But this is usually very expensive. On top of that, it's even more difficult because the IT strategy is probably changing. Different departments have implemented different CRMs and marketing automation. So it's very difficult that it's almost impossible that you find a cohesive, cohesive ecosystem. And obviously, if you start from scratch, of course you can do it, but very few startups can afford this kind of technology. So what usually happens is that you build your own kind of custom ecosystem. So this is just to show you what I was doing at USM when I was there 2 or 3 years ago. Basically, for each of these different tools, you try to find different technologies and you put them together. And that's also kind of what we do at Zurich. As you saw in my initial chart, our technology stack is really fragmented. It consists of many different tools. And the idea, and you will see now as soon, is that we integrate everything together. And there is what is known as APIs and integrations also, which I'll explain. So these are very, very key topics in the world of digital. So now that I've kind of given you a broad overview of the company, industry, customer experience, why it's important, why it's how the whole process is being done, and also you have a little flavor of the technology ecosystem, the different tools that are required to deliver these experiences. Now I want to look at what we're doing at Zurich, so basically my job and what our department is doing, how we're collaborating with all the different units in Zurich. So digital is a relatively new field. It was usually within digital or it was mainly with marketing. There's obviously a lot of IT involvement. There's a whole design aspect. So now, so it's still fragmented. There is not a single unit in Zurich that does digital, but everybody collaborates to do digital. And that is usually how it is in most companies. For us, as I said, we have the digital also from a customer experience. So we really start at the basic, then we go down to the technology, which I think is the right way to do it. So let's now look at the key elements. So if you want to do digital experience, right, so what do you need? I can break it down into 3 different aspects that are fundamental to this. First is your strategy, which I started at the beginning with, is to have your customer-centric organization. You need to be able to adapt your organization very quickly because it's constantly changing. And you need to have the right processes. You cannot have very fixed things in place and expect to produce a good experience for the customer. The second thing is that once you have that in place, you need to really look at the user experience, the customer experience, and what I showed you in terms of service design, in terms of how you really analyze the customer journey and also figure out how the journey should look like. So really adapting your processes and your interactions to match that target experience that you have defined to be good. And finally, you want to look at then the technology platforms. So these are really the right tools. As I showed you, there's thousands of them. You need to have a good IT strategy. You need to IT strategy that focuses on the customer. You need to have data-driven decision making. You basically need all these things in place to have a good, consistent digital experience. And so in Zurich, so this is how we see it, and I will just take you through the different, projects. So these are, operational things that are really done on the ground to build the organizations. Most of what I was showing you earlier was really, high level, strategic, vision, and now really, okay, let's look at what is happening deep down in the company. How are we trying to change the organization to match the customer centricity that our our global leaders have given us. And I will take you through. So in terms of the strategy, obviously you want to make your organization agile. You need the customer journey, the frameworks in place. You need an NPS program to really measure the customer. In terms of design, so I will show you what a Zurich design system looks like. So how do you cater to in marketing before it was all about just giving a brand guideline. It was a PDF document, right? But it's now, you cannot do that anymore. You need a whole different approach to digital experience, to make your website, apps, and I'll show you that. There's a whole focus on user experience design. Also, looking at how you interact, your customers interact with all your different touch points, your apps, your email, social media. Also creating the connected workflow. So operationally, all these things need to come into place. And also in terms of design, the whole traditional agency model is being dismantled right now. You have all the consulting companies coming in. You have what is known as crowdsourcing, and usually crowdsourcing was a big hype, but it died away. But now it's coming back, and I will show you how we're doing it. And in terms of technology, you really need to understand the technology map, the ecosystem, and a lot of the times, when you design the customer experience, you also need to understand your internal architecture, your systems, because you can go and build the most fancy, most amazing user experience as a prototype, but then if you can't implement it, this is useless. So you really need to understand how the IT is in place, because this is really the driving force. And sometimes there are things that you want to do and you just can't do it, right? And one of the ways we try to address that is by having a two-speed IT system, which I will also explain how the different parts of the organization moves at different speeds. And the other thing is, as I also mentioned, the integrated ecosystem and also cloud first strategy. So cloud was a big hype thing and now it's become reality, and I will show you how we're also doing that. So let me start first with the agile organization. So what does that mean? Essentially in the past, you did the waterfall, a traditional way, and this is how most projects are usually still done. You had different big phases where you defined it, you build it, you release, so it was all big phases. And then the thing is that because it's digital, the customers are changing, your requirements will always change because yes, you may conceive something and it may look nice, but then what happens 6 months down the line when somebody launches another app that is much better than yours? So you need to constantly be able to adapt what you're building, and that's where the whole agile methodology comes into play. And this just means that the phases are condensed now. So you don't go and plan for 2 years. You plan for the next, I don't know, maybe 2 months, and then you build a prototype, or we call it an MVP. And this basically means a minimum viable product that you can then test with your customer. So it's really all about getting instantaneous feedback. This whole approach of user centricity, human kind of user, this whole human-centric design, and this is where really the agile methodology, and it fits very well into the design thinking and the service design. All these things I told you about, it all fits very nicely together. So agile is usually used in terms of software development. It's a very technology thing. Just to show you an example. So most of my projects are now in agile. How this works, I'm usually the product owner. I connect the project team or the development team with the organization. I set the vision out for the product, or it could be an app, it could be a website, it could be a platform, so it could be various things. And you basically do cycles of 2 weeks. They're called sprints. Every 2 weeks, I release something, is then tested with the end users. It usually, we show the demo, people give feedback, and then we go back, and then maybe we have to tweak something, or we build new features. And it all works with the big product backlog, and you're constantly prioritizing what you need. Maybe today, I will decide on feature A, B, C, D, and then 3 weeks down the line, 3 weeks later, I find that, okay, the feature A is not relevant. Okay, I scrap it. Let's do feature Z now. So it gives me the full flexibility to kind of do whatever I want. Obviously, you need to have the vision in place. You need to have a clear roadmap. But at the same time, you can change a lot of things around to match the environment. And this is how most organizations are I think, going this direction. The problem we have is that even though you can do it at a project level, you need to get your stakeholders to be agile, and you need to get them to think. So we're still expected to give these long reports every quarter, and so it's not exactly there, but we are moving in that direction. There is a lot of emphasis being placed on empowering the product owners internally. So this whole process of building digital solutions is being changed. The other big thing is that it's a cross-functional team. So you're working with, as you see, the designers, developers, analysts, subject matter experts. You're all in one team. You don't have different departments, and you just do what is best for the product or the project, right? So rather than trying to do all these politics. So I think this is a good methodology that organizations need to adapt if they want to be digital. I don't know if you guys have seen that before, or the other thing is we internally also have a methodology, let's say. So from a high-level perspective, okay, you know that you need to map the journeys, but then how do you do it? We have a whole toolkit that tells you, okay, here's a blueprint. You know that you need to do certain research workshops. You have cards that are telling you when you interview, what questions to ask, what to look for. You have different personas you need to create. You then put that onto insights. So there's a whole toolkit that we build. Is very much built on the service design methodology. And there's all these workshops. And I think I showed you an example earlier on where we bring all the different units together. It's a product team, country team, global team, and then we do the workshops with them and then construct what is known as a blueprint, or it could be a customer journey map. And once you create something like that, so you really then get an understanding of the customer. So at each touch point, at each little interaction, we can look at the micro aspects of the interaction. We can then look at the phases that I showed you. Once we analyze the different phases, we'll even go deeper to see, okay, where are the pain points? Is the customer happy with the way that they're getting the form? Are they happy, with the way that the renewal email is coming, and are they able to respond in a proper way? So there's a lot of things that you can learn, and is a really good way to essentially understand the customer. And this is an example of what we did. So one of the big topics we had was to really understand the customers in different European markets. So in Spain, for example, we found that there's a bunch of sleeping users who buy the product but then don't really think about it, and then they're just at the end of the year canceling it. So we obviously need to target them and essentially find ways to activate the sleeping users, and basically have services around. As I was mentioning earlier, customers expect to have services around the product itself. The other big thing is we have a global framework. So once you have the whole journey map figured out and you know what the customer is, you can really use the framework to create new experiences. And this is our global framework. It's just an example of how it looks. I talked about the NPS before. So we have a whole program now relaunched. So we have the whole touch points across the world. It's covered with NPS. And this is now activated. It's actually my bigger team that is doing that. So, and it's huge successful across the company. So that was kind of strategic level. What about the design aspect? Design is very important because if you look at the companies that are really excelling, like Apple, they really focus on design. And basically, what we are finding is that right before, the graphic designer just had to deal with print. Now there's so many different things. They have to look at animations, interactivity, and just like the technology ecosystem, there's 100 different tools you can use for design. And this is also making things very difficult because we have 53,000 employees, a lot of them doing design, and it doesn't make sense to have all that. So we're trying to kind of consolidate our whole workflow and ecosystem. This is kind of what we call the connected workflow. And the other big thing, so how do you put it all together? So if I'm a company and I have all these different markets and I need to ensure consistent brand and user experience across the globe, you cannot just give a PDF guideline. You need to really give them much more than that. So what we offer now, and I built this actually called ZDX Design Zurich Digital Experience. You cannot actually access it, but I can show you if you have time. Essentially, we give them design principles, templates, we give them components, we have a software development kit. So if I'm a developer, designer, a project manager, whatever, I can go in, I can get all these things straight away, and then I can build my experience very easily. I don't need to build a button again and again. I just give you a button and you just put it in, boom, you're done, right? And that's so, and we use what is known as atomic design principle. So everything is an atom and you break it up. So how does that look like? So if you go on the website, you basically get all the colors, this whole values of hexadecimal value, the Zurich blue, you get code. So this is just there's a share button. So you get everything basically out of the box. You can just download this big zip file and you can start to build your website straight away. So it's super easy. Same thing with mobile. So here's how the mobile experience. So if you're building an app for the Android or iOS, you go here, you download the whole files, and then you basically can set up your app very easily. Here's the buttons that you get. So it's a very extensive tool, and we're improving that constantly. And essentially, We also have e-commerce templates. You can do customer portal. You can do basically whatever you want. And so all this is, just speeds up the whole workflow. So just to show you how our user experience has evolved. So this is 2012, 13. So you see here it's now responsive, and slowly you're getting more transactional stuff. It's becoming responsive, and here is now in 2018 we're offering e-commerce. So so this is kind of what the design system is doing for us. It's essentially helping us move to provide a much better user experience, and also is really speeding up the transformation. And I was mentioning earlier, we have a crowdsourcing platform. So crowdsourcing is essentially you have a huge community. So I create a contest for them, and then you can basically get different ideas and you choose the winner, right? That's the crowdsourcing. And we use what is called Top Coder. So this is now offered internally to all the people, and it really speeds up the process, but also it's much lower cost. In terms of technology, I want to explain the two big differences. One is the front end, which is your visible customer facing. And then you also have your back end, which is, as I was mentioning earlier, it's more complex. And I really like this picture because it shows you how it usually is. Your back end is usually a monster that nobody sees, and your front end is, this beautiful mermaid. And so we have what is known as a two-speed IT strategy. So the back end is moving at a very different speed, because you need to cater to so many systems and infrastructure and architecture and networking, security, whereas from the customer user experience side, we move very quickly. So that's what I showed you earlier. I can move my website, the designs, the interactions very fast while I let my IT team re-platform, change, and how do we do that? So this is just what is the internal strategy. How do we do that? It's called two-speed IT, and also this is an app I made for Portugal, and it's a beautiful app. We're changing all our systems to this Apple-like user experience, and so for all these legacy systems, this is just the front end. The back end is still the same, and what we do is we use APIs. So APIs is an intermediary that lets two applications talk to each other. So you can basically wrap your backend systems in a layer or middleware, we call it, and then make APIs. So the data is coming out in a readable format, and then our apps or websites can read that quickly and talk to it. So that's kind of what the API does, and that's the foundation. That's the kind of how we're able to implement our two-speed IT system. And the other thing we do is we map the journey. So as I said, we have all these technologies, and obviously we need to, at each point of the journey, we map it. So it's very easy for you when you have your journey map that you understand that you have to use certain technologies. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's just to show you how we connect the technology with the customer experience. The other thing is obviously we integrate all the tools together. So here is just a diagram. Again, this is our ecosystem, and we integrated around our customer-facing CMS called Sitecore, or this is our digital experience platform that I was talking about earlier. So everything is kind of built around that. So the customer is always front, and then we can then get the data, we can deliver emails, all the things around it. So this is why it's there. Cloud is also very important for us. So this is to explain cloud. It's a complex topic. It's basically a bunch of servers in somebody else's, data center. But at a very basic level, it's like using Uber, right? Before, if I wanted to set up a website, I needed to build my own data center, order servers. It took 3 months, a lot of money. Now I just call Microsoft, give me this data center. Boom, I can put up my app in 1 day. No questions asked. Super simple. This is the power of cloud, and it's platform as a service and software as a service. These are the two things that we use, and now every digital service needs to go to the cloud first. That's our strategy. So other big thing is, and this is kind of the future of Zurich, what I'm working on is really to bring it all together. I mean, it's great that we understand all these things. You know they have to do design and strategy and technology, but But when you're dealing with 40 different markets with different needs, from a headquarter perspective, you need something very simple, that you have everything consolidated. And so we're basically working on the Zurich Suite, where it's very much like Adobe or these, but it's not just technology focused, but it's essentially we offer that end-to-end digital kind of all the solutions as a toolbox. So all in one kind of thing. So everything from the customer journey, analytics, marketing automation, mobile, the design system you saw, cloud. So, and I think if we're able to connect all that and we offer this is really the kind of the holy grail of digital transformation in a big company. I know we're running out of time, so I'll quickly wrap up. So why we're doing that is really to accelerate that digital transformation. So as you build your capability or service, you can see that this tool will help you speed that up. Everything from your customer journey, user experience, technology infrastructure, developing the software, and finally the whole measurement and framework. So with that, I will conclude. I think we're out of time.
We have 1 minute, no? Right, because there's we could listen the whole afternoon. But then the next, I think the law students want to come in soon. The next class.
Okay.
And, but I think what we also have here a small present for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
And thank you, Deepak. So that's a wine.
Thank you.
and I think also here we see the complexity of the whole topic. And here are the final thoughts. Maybe you can read them on your own. But I think what's interesting here, like if we want to move towards digital, I think it's quite interesting. That's highly integrative. Mm-hmm. And it's not just marketing on its own and IT. So
it's all together, yeah, exactly.
That's also in your career, I think that's merging.
Yeah.
And maybe one final thought for you, like one final recommendation for our marketing students.
Yeah.
Should they learn how to code, or should they?
I actually have a slide on that. It's you need to do it.
That's it. Yeah.
It's this. You need to be a Renaissance man in digital because you need to have creativity. You need to understand technology. You need to understand the business. You need to have really understand the customer. So you cannot do one without the other. And it's not longer. It's not longer marketing anymore. Right? Marketing is part of it. But at the end of the day, if you want to do digital, you want to be successful. And if I look at the people that are really succeeding in my company and other companies, it's the people that really can do the entire. You become a generalist kind of. That's the idea. But at the same time, become deep in certain aspects of. So yeah.
And how do you do that? How do you become the Renaissance man?
You need to be very curious. Yeah, I don't know. You be curious. You need to try things. You need to just. You cannot get comfortable, right? So that's the key. Always need to be learning, and you cannot really learn from textbooks. So it's about blogs, social media, conferences, all this.
Coursera, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. TEDx, all these different open.
So at the university, we cannot provide all of this. So also your homework.